Picture this. You're standing on top of a fortress wall, absolutely certain no army on earth can touch you. You've got a moat so deep it could swallow horses whole. You've got walls thick enough to laugh at battering rams. You're basically untouchable, right? Now imagine and the enemy, they're already climbing over your walls. This isn't fantasy. That military historians still study it today. They called it the Battle of the Ides, and I'm about to tell you why. So, let's set the scene properly. The entire Middle East is in chaos. The Byzantine Empire and the Persian Sassanid Empire have been beating each other senseless for decades, and they're both exhausted. Into this power vacuum comes a force nobody saw coming, an army from the Arabian Peninsula, led by a man whose nickname literally translates to the Sword of God Israel name. Khalid even. BT's point Khalid has already done the impossible. He smashed through the Persian frontier defenses like they were made of paper. He's turned the Euphrates River red with blood at a place called Ole. He's captured the city of Hiranut. Through brute force, mind you, but through clever diplomacy. The man's not just a warrior. He's a strategist, a negotiator, and frankly, a bit of a genius. But Hira was never meant to be the final destination. It was the staging ground, because further north, glittering like a prize beyond measure, sat Sitasip on the imperial capital of the Persian Empire. All the wealth, all the power, all the prestige. It was there for the taking. Except there was a problem, a massive, heavily fortified problem called Anbar. Now Anbar wasn't just some random city you could bypass. It was the beating heart of Persian military logistics. Think of it as the Amazon warehouse of ancient warfare grain stores. Weapons, arsenals, armor, supplies, everything an empire needs to keep its armies running. Which means victorious Shapa, after one of their greatest kings. I should tell you something about how important they thought this place was. The city's defenses were absolutely formidable. But the real genius was the moat. The Persians had diverted water from the Euphrates to create this massive, rushing barrier around the entire city. It was wide, it was deep. The governor in charge was a bloke named Shirzad, and he was feeling pretty smug about the whole situation. He'd look at those defenses and think, right, let these desert raiders try something. They'll break themselves against my walls like waves on a cliff. And you know what? He had every reason to be confident. The Arabs were primarily cavalry. Light cavalry at that. They didn't have siege engines. They didn't have a navy. How on earth were they supposed to cross a moat, under fire, scale the walls, and take a fortified city? Shirzad made one crucial mistake, though. He thought he was fighting a conventional war. He had no idea he was up against someone who looked at impossible obstacles and saw puzzles waiting to be solved. When Khalad's army rolled up to Anbar, the situation looked exactly as grim as you'd expect. The city gates were shut tight. Persian soldiers lined the walls. And they weren't being subtle about their confidence. They were actually jeering at the Muslim army, taunting them, basically saying, "Go on then. Have a go if you think you're hard enough." The moat stretched between the two forces like an uncrossable chasm. No boats, no bridge, just deep, fast-moving water that would drag down anyone foolish enough to try swimming across in armor. Khalad rode forward personally to survey the situation. Right, lads, get comfortable. We're gonna be here a while. Instead, Khalid looks at his archers. Now, these weren't your average medieval bowmen. Many of them came from the tribes of Yemen and the deep desert men who'd been hunting since they were children. Men who could hit a running gazelle from the back of a galloping horse. These were people for whom archery wasn't a military skill. It was survival. It was culture. It was in their blood. And Khalid gives them an order that's absolutely chilling in its precision. He doesn't say, "Fire at will." He's not ordering suppressing fire. He's ordering targeted mutilation. This is surgical violence, calculated to create maximum psychological impact with maximum efficiency. 1,000 archers step forward. Up on the walls, the Persian soldiers are still watching with casual curiosity. Their visors are up because, well, why wouldn't they be? The enemy's all the way down there, across an uncrossable moat. They're safe, right? Then the air fills with a sound like 1,000 angry wasps. In one coordinated moment, a cloud of arrows arcs upward. This isn't random. This isn't spray and pray. Every single archer has picked a target. Every single arrow has a destination. Historical sources talking about chroniclers like Ibn Kathir and Al-Tabari Accord. What happened next? And it's genuinely horrifying. The arrows don't clatter uselessly against stone walls. They find flesh. Specifically, they find eyes. The ramparts erupt in screams. Soldiers are clutching their faces, stumbling backwards. Some die instantly. Those are the lucky ones. Others are blinded, their faces fountains of blood, their military careers over in the span of a heartbeat. According to the historical accounts, that single volley blinded 1,000 men, 1,000 eyes. Gone an hour. Can you imagine the panic? You're a Persian soldier. You've been told these Arabs are just raiders, nothing to worry about. And suddenly your mate next to you is screaming, hands over his face, blood pouring between his fingers. Then another one goes down, then another. And you realize just looking at the enemy is enough to lose your sight. The entire garrison throws themselves flat on the floor of the ramparts. Nobody dares peek over the wall. To even glance at the Muslim army is to risk permanent blindness or death. The Muslims gave this engagement a name that day. They called it Dat Aluyanda, Battle of the Eyes. Khalid had achieved his first objective. He'd suppressed the walls. The Persian archers were too terrified to return fire, but the moat... The moat was still there. The enemy was blinded, sure, but the water barrier remained, and Khalid needed to cross it now, while the panic was fresh, while the psychological advantage was at its peak. He didn't have time to send men into the countryside to cut down trees for timber. He didn't have boats. He didn't have prefabricated bridges. So he looked at a supply train. Specifically, he looked at the old, weak camels, the ones too aged or frail to carry heavy loads anymore. Animals that were basically being kept around for eventual food or minor tasks. And Khalid made a decision that demonstrates just how ruthless he could be when logistics demanded it. He ordered the slaughter of these old camels. But they weren't to be butchered for meat. Instead, he ordered his men to throw the carcasses into the moat at one specific, narrow point. It's grim, isn't it? But it's also brilliant. Pile after pile, the bodies go in. The water level rises around them, but the solid mass creates a causeway. A bridge made of flesh and bone, while the Persian defenders are still cowering behind their battlements. Too frightened to show their faces, the Muslim infantry makes their move. They charge across this grotesque bridge. They reach the base of the wall, ladders go up, and suddenly, the supposedly untouchable fortress is breached. Governor Shirzad, watching this nightmare unfold, realizes the game is up. His men are blinded and terrified. The moat's been crossed. The sword of God is literally at his gates. He sends a messenger to Khalid with an offer of surrender. But Shahzadeh's got a condition. He wants to leave the city with his garrison and return to Ctesiphon in safety. Now, Khalid could have just slaughtered them all. He's got every military advantage. But he agrees to the terms, with a strict stipulation. You can leave with your lives, but you leave with nothing else. No gold, no weapons, no treasures. Shahzad accepts. The gates open. The Persian garrison begins their march of shame. But as they're leaving, the Muslims notice something odd. These soldiers are wearing unusually bulky robes, looking like they've put on 3 stone overnight. Khalid stops them, orders them to shake out their clothing. And what tumbles out? Gold cups, silk fabrics, jewelry, basically anything valuable and small enough to hide. Now, technically, this is a breach of surrender terms. Khalid could execute them all for it, and nobody would have blamed him. But he keeps his word. He simply confiscates the loot, strips them of their armor and horses, and sends them walking into the desert towards Ctesiphon. Can you picture that? These proud Persian soldiers, trudging through the desert on foot, disgraced, defeated, heading back to explain to their emperor how they lost an impregnable fortress. Khalid took the city without a massacre. He captured the supplies without destroying them. And most importantly, he showed the people of Embar that whilst his arrows were deadly accurate, his word was ironclad. The Battle of the Ides became legendary. It spread through military camps like wildfire. This wasn't just an army of religious zealots throwing themselves recklessly at their enemies. This was professional military excellence combined with terrifying innovation. Every garrison commander in Iraq got the message loud and clear. You are not safe behind your walls. The old rules don't apply anymore. Khalid now controlled a crucial stretch of the Euphrates. The road to Ctesiphon was opening up. But warfare never gives you time to rest on your laurels. Reports started coming in from the south. At an oasis called Ain al-Tamur, a massive force was gathering Arab, Christian tribes allied with Persian auxiliaries. Their leader was a man named Akka,